So next up, we've got a very interesting scratch build of a narrow gauge locomotive. Um, we've got Dave Mallett, New Tracks mentor. He's last presented part one of this in July. Um, and is he there?
Okay,
You there, Dave?
so
Yeah. Okay.
bring up bring up some pictures.
Yeah, he'll bring
Yeah,
up.
you might want to flip your camera around. I think you've got your cameras pushed to the
Oh,
back.
you're right.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there we go.
All right, we can pop up the welcome to the show as a presenter, David. And I really enjoyed July's presentation, the scratch build. And having seen your presentation, I think everybody's going to be in for a real treat this evening. So, show's all yours.
All righty. Uh, so as I described in the part one, um, when I started this, so if you want to bring up the first picture, next one. So this is the company that I'm. Argent Lumber Company is one of my favorite logging companies, and this is their number 5 engine, which is a prairie type engine, very unusual for a narrow gauge engine. Uh, very light on its feet for very small track. Um, so next picture. So this was my first attempt at it using a Bachmann Mogul, and I wasn't really happy with it. The boiler was too big, and the wheels were too big, and it just the dimensions just didn't really fit it. So I kind of abandoned it, kept the tender, and at that time I got a Forney, and I found a 240 that I built as a logging engine, and then I burned out the decoder, and it sat. I went through life changes and so on. So I dragged it out about a year ago, and so next picture. I dragged it out about a year ago. This is another picture of the engine, what it looked like. Really neat engine. Uh, the old cabbage stack wood burning locomotive, typical of a logging line lumber company. Next photo. Um, so I dragged it out and started measuring the 240 and found the wheels were the right size. It was I had made that out of a Forney, so I had another Forney around. So this was just a mock-up to see if I liked the way it looked. The boiler was the right size, the wheels are the right size, and just the general dimensions. I used the Forney cab here. So away I went. So next slide, next picture. I cut the two frames and glued them together. So I used the wood on the bottom as a straight edge just to make to line everything up right. Put some weight on it as I was gluing it. I just used epoxy. I used JB weld. Next slide. So you can see this is looking at it. It's laying on its side, and the dark line there in the middle is I Z-cut the frame so that it overlapped, and that way it would be really strong. So the dark line in the middle is, you can see where I made the Z-cut and where it's glued together. So next slide. This is just another picture of, again, you can see the dark areas just ahead of where the motor and the gear tower is. So that's where it all came together. Next slide. And this is where I put the wheels on it to see if it was all going to work out. And so I kind of missed it on the slide before. I had to file. I took a round file and actually cut into the frame. I had to change the location of one of the axles to to get the wheelbase to come out right. So go ahead, next slide. Next one after. So this is where I cut the boiler down and trying to figure out how I'm going to fit the boiler on the whole thing. And on the engine, the boiler sits much higher than it does on a 40. In the back of it, I just stuck a piece of plastic in there, that black plastic hanging out the back. Just sat on top of the motor so I could get an idea of, mocking it up, how it was going to look. Next slide. So this is sort of the mock-up of everything. Cut off another section because I already had 240s. I cut off another section of the boiler, which is sitting on the frame, or excuse me, on the rail in the back of it. I built up the what's the word I want to use? The steam chest in front for the boiler sits on. I built that up about 1/8 of an inch to get the boiler up. So this is a thing where there's no written rules to do this. So in scratch building it, I just mock it up and figure out how I'm going to make it happen. And so that's this process. Next slide. And then I dug up another cab, which is a metal cab. I think this is off of a modern 440 Bachmann. I'm not entirely sure. Again, I'm mocking this up, and you can see underneath the cab is what's left of the frame that where the 40 cab sat on, which is obviously not going to work, but I kind of left it on there so I could use it to prop stuff up while I'm doing the mock-up. And you can see the inside of where the inside of the boiler sits. The back head, the firebox, sits inside the cab there. So I'm thinking, wow, this is going along really good, but what am I going to do from here? So next slide. Next picture, Tom. Next one. You're going backing up. There we go. So, and I'm usually working on 2 or 3 things at a time. I work on something, get it mocked up, and try to do a couple things, and then put it back together to see how it's going to look. So here I've got a piece of brass that I've drilled out for a mock-up of a side rod. I got the rear wheels stuffed up underneath of it to see where they're going to sit, and then the bottom part of the firebox, I'm starting to file that down to see how that's all going to look. I got black plastic that's vertical. It's kind of jammed up inside the boiler at the back just to kind of hold everything together while I'm doing this. Next slide. So this is the frame, and you can see the rod. I've profiled the rod on the side of it, and I'm looking at this trying to figure out how am I going to extend the frame out the back, because as you can see there's not much there. So it sat for a couple weeks while I debated on how to, and then I'm looking through all my scrap stuff, my brass, and trying to figure it out. Finally, I ran across a piece of brass square tubing that's, I think it was an inch. I forget. Anyway, and I looked at it and I figured that if I filed down the frame of the engine, that it would actually slide right on over it. So I started, you really can't see it here, but you can see in the back a little bit where I filed down the frame, and I'm trying to figure out how all that's going to come together. Next picture. So, yeah, right there. So these are the pieces that I'm starting to make up. The piece directly behind it is the frame extension. And I've filed down, and you can see the engine itself, the shiny part of it, right behind the wheels, and actually behind, directly behind, I should say, underneath the wheel, where I filed it down, and this is going to slide right over top of it and catch the back just behind the motor there. There's a little tab sticking out, just enough to catch that brass. The piece behind it is describe that further, but that is going to go over the gear tower and hold the boiler. The piece directly in front of us is the mount that I have machined up, cut up to hold the back of the cab. So next photo. This shows the rear frame section in place, and you can see the screw goes down through the brass directly behind the motor and holds that frame section in place. It was part of the original frame, and luckily I didn't cut it off, and so the rest of it just slides up alongside the frame, and then I started kind of whittling out the bottom where the trailing wheels are going to go into. So this is a kind of a retake of this picture. At this point, I didn't have the wiring in there. This kind of came later, but you can see how the wiring's going up between the frame and the outside of the brass frame that I made, and up alongside the motor. It's about the only place I could figure out to push these wires up through. Next slide, next picture. So this is the upright. It's laying down, so you can see the machine work I did to it. It's square tubing that I cut open, and then on what's on the top side here is two pieces of 3/32 brass tubing that I have soldered onto the square tubing, and the opening there I have machined that and a 3/32 tubing, and you can see it's made a slot there. Next slide. So this is upright, and it's now sliding down over the gear tower, and also catching the I cut back the frame of the motor, which is plastic, and this the 3/32 tubing slides right down over that frame to hold it in place. And so the whole thing will slide down. Next slide, next picture. And so this is where it's bottomed out. It's sitting right on top of the frame, and it butts up against the section of the that runs to the back of the engine, and it's quite stable. I'm not sure that and it fits pretty snug, and the boiler sits on top of it. So I'm not sure that I'm going to make it fit, bolt it down in any fashion. And I might end up boxing it to the boiler. I haven't quite decided how that's going to go yet. Next slide. So this is showing the plug that I got, which was from Soundtrax, and how the wires run. In the white plastic is just temporary pieces to hold the wires up, and so as the wires go up inside the frame there, they're going up around the motor itself. There's just enough room in there. I've made a slot, so there's just enough room for the wires to go up alongside the motor. And so I used one of the original threaded holes in the frame to run the bolt through for the rear trailing truck, and it worked out perfect. I had to make a little, take a little piece of brass tubing and then a brass washer to put on there so it would fit on there snug and rotate real nicely. Next picture. So this is the tender. It's a wood frame tender to try to keep in with the prototype. This is the other part of the electrical plug, and where you solder the wires in, and they run up to the square, the rectangular part on the right, which is where where the other part of the plug, the male part, plugs into it. In the foreground is a piece of brass that I've made up that plug fits into, uh, and the brass is glued into then the tender. You can see the notch on the tender, and just to the left of that notch, that piece of brass glues right into the tender itself. Next slide. Oops. Um, Picture.
We just lost screen sharing for a second and it got goofed up here on my end. I don't know what my computer decided to get ornery on me. And it threw you out, it threw you out of the slideshow mode. Don't quite know why it did that. That's what happens when you don't feed your computers well.
Or you don't have a Mac.
I was wondering.
David, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When you cut the frame and put the two pieces together, what did you use for glue, and did you clamp that to make it a good bond?
So I use JB Weld,
Okay.
which is basically an epoxy. And no, I just, because it has a thickness and it's very strong. My biggest worry was to get it aligned very squarely. But it did. I didn't need to clamp it. It fit. It was a pretty tight fit.
What?
Okay. So next picture. So this is the piece of brass. I cut a piece of plastic to put on top of it just as a precautionary to make sure that I wasn't going to have any shorts on, because everything was a very snug fit, and that plug fits right on top of this. The little piece of brass tubing slides over it, and that's what the link from the tender to locomotive goes around. So this was a multi-purpose type of arrangement here. Next photo. So you can see on the tender itself, with this wire soldered in place, and the plug in place, being held down with the nut and the spacer, and then the link hanging on there, and then the brass piece is the engine frame extension, and you can see where I have soldered a piece that goes across there with a stud sticking up that I have also threaded for the link to hook onto on the engine itself. Next slide. So this is with the frame extension back on the locomotive, and you can see how the wires go underneath the where the stud comes out, a cross member for the link to the tender. And you can also see the wires where they go through and then up alongside the frame of the motor. Yeah. So next slide. So this is with it all hooked together, and you can see how the link all corresponds in between the two. Very tight fit. The plug fits in there very nicely, and you can't. I mean, you can't hardly see anything when you're looking at the locomotive. Again, everything everything's very snug fit on all this stuff, and you can see how tight the, the tender truck is to it all. So quite an endeavor. Next slide, next picture. So this is just putting the Bluenami, installing the Bluenami current keeper, the speaker. So this is a 20, I think a 28 millimeter speaker with a tender pretty much open except for the Bluenami, and the current keeper it's a really nice echo chamber, has really good sound to it. You can see where the wires go forward and right down through the tender and into the plug. Next photo. So just showing it all with the wires and how it all looks with the tender tank wrapper on top of it. Next slide. Again, here's a side shot of it. So this is where I could test run it. So actually, I test ran it before this. But this was just the plug and everything in place were sort of in the final, except for the wires for the lights and so on, and just to test run it, and it runs really nice. Next photo. Showing the locomotive from the back. The two black pieces of plastic where I glued them inside of the boiler, and they hang down and cover up the motor, and then the boiler, the firebox sits because it's the same configuration. It just slides right down over the black plastic and closes it all in. And the gap in between is where the cab sits down on. So and then you can see the back piece for the cab mount, and where the plug sticks out of the back of the frame there. Next photo. So this is the piece for the front. Again, I used the square tubing, and just kind of started cutting it down to fit. Next photo. You can kind of see the reinforcement. So this is you can see the bottom. I drilled and tapped, and this is the bottom of the square tubing, and then as the side, I just started cutting down the sides, whittling down the sides. Well, I kind of made up a template and then whittled down the sides until I had a configuration that I was happy with, and then I cut some more square tubing and fitted inside of the frame section in the top and the front, and soldered it in and drilled holes for the front bumper, and a couple of screws right into the wood end of the front bumper bolster. Next photo. So here's a side shot of it. Came out really nice curve to it. It's a little long, but you know, it's some of the stuff you have to compromise to make it. And as long, my thing is, as I'm building this, I really wanted to have the character is what I was after. So, and there will be a little piece that will go on the top of this to kind of close in that frame section. So, and this is where it's all together, and I can actually run it in this stage. So this is when I'm test running it at one of the meets, and so in the process of sending it over, I guess we lost the sound to it, and it's a little jerky, but it runs really nice. So And
Hang on, let me reshare that with sound, because when I set this up, I didn't think I had sound. So let me go ahead and share it. Hang on, actually, let me do it this way. Let me see if I can do something different.
so
Hang
while you're doing that, I'll show you a picture. I've stripped it down to the bare metal and working the cab out. I made a back part of the cab. I guess you can't see that real well, but you stripped it down to the bare metal, closed off the window on the side, cut the doors out in front. So the boiler's almost ready and the cab are almost ready to paint. I still have some stuff to do to the frame of the engine itself. So, okay,
Okay.
you got it?
And play this now. Here we hang on. Let me just see. There we go.
Part way. All righty.
Well, nice work, David.
Thank you.
And we look forward to part 3. Does anyone have any questions for David on his scratch build?
David, what kind of tools did you use to cut that brass?
So I have a knockoff Dremel that I use. It's a junk store. I can't think what you call it. But the thin stuff in like the back of the cab, that is really thin, and I just used a pair of scissors to cut that. And then I have I forget what you call them, where it pulls down and will take small pieces out of it.
Nibbler. Yep.
Nibbler, that's what I'm thinking. I had a nibbler that I used to kind of cut that out, and the rest of it I just filed.
David,
Well, it looks great. It looks great. Can't
Thank
wait
you.
to see it painted.
David, Pat here.
Yeah,
You did a great job on that.
thank
For the
you.
work you've done. How many hours have you put in it already?
Oh, you don't even want to know.
I would like a rough idea.
I've been working on and off of it probably for about a year now.
I believe it. I really do. But you're doing a great job. Keep
Thank
it up.
you. And it's a labor of love.
I know.
I could have made things a lot easier. There's times when I'm cut down, a 1/16 of an inch off because,
Yeah.
just make it much closer. Where you could live with it if it wasn't a prototype locomotive. If you were just doing a nice locomotive, there's a lot of things I could have lived with there.
And you're only halfway when you get the railing and all the piping. That'll be really a lot of fun.
So there's not a lot of piping. The injectors, I've got it drilled for the handrails on the boiler. I still got to do the cab and the tender yet. But they didn't have any brakes. They didn't have air brakes on it. No brakes at all.
Right.
I think maybe the engine had vacuum brakes, but there was no air compressor on any of the engines.
You must have just throttled back when you were on that thing.
There weren't any vacuum brakes at that time.
No.
Log cars, well, they ran this up into the 50s. The log cars had no brakes on them, but this is in South Carolina. Everything's flat. It's like Florida. Everything's flat. So, how far the car's going to go if they run away?
Going downhill, you'd have to put it in reverse before you start.
So, yeah.
Nice.
And they ran link and pin right up into the end, up into 55 or something like that. I forget exactly. 58, I think. they ran the Lincoln pin couplers the whole time because they weren't. I always forget the term where they're
Knuckle couple.
Knuckle coupler.
Public access.
Oh.
They could get away with that stuff.
Yeah. We can get through with a safety inspection now.
And in the end, there weren't even doors left on the cabs of the locomotives. I mean,
just curtains.
Yeah, they actually logged Georgia, and their operation was located in North Carolina. I mean, in South Carolina, but the actual logging was done in Georgia and stuff in the swamps there.
And they ran the swamps in South Carolina, and she's all kinds of strange stuff. They had a bridge that they bought that opened. Turned God, I can't think what you call it, a bridge that rotated, and that was it was a car bridge that they bought from some place and moved down the river and put it up to get across the river there to log into Georgia.
Yep.
They had another place where they crossed the standard gauge main line, double main line, and they had a turntable that they turned upside down as a bridge to go over the mainline railroads, which was, I don't know if it was ACL, I forget now which one it was, but and how they ever convinced the standard gauge to do that, I'll never know.
They might not have asked.
So, in another place, they actually crossed the main. They had a crossing on a main line. So, all kinds of really strange, interesting stuff about the company.
All right. Any other questions for David? We're looking forward to part 3, where we will see a finished locomotive and a couple engineers in there running that thing, maybe a fireman and an engineer.
I already got them. Got some printed ones. So,
great job. That's really going to be a third model when it's done.
thank you.